Inoculation is a funny word, one which we used rather liberally, and some might say foolishly, in our pre-CES Pocketnow Weekly. Well, now, as you can hear, we're paying the price. The trade show plague smacked 2/3 of our team right in the face, and exhaustion from extended and messed up travel plans did the rest. Still, we're committed to never missing a week, and we've got a lot to recap from CES 2014 on episode 078 of the Pocketnow Weekly, the once-a-week audio podcast where we discuss mobile technology, smartphones, tablets, wearables, and most things in between. I'm your host, Michael Fisher, editorial director at Pocketnow, and joining me for this doubtless cough-filled production are the hopefully healthy multimedia manager, Jaime Rivera. Buenos tardes to you.
Hopefully healthy will start when I start getting my first beer. How are you?
I'm not very well. And my vocally challenged Vegas comrade and former roommate, senior editor Taylor Martin. How's the phlegm? Yeah.
Hello. I'm fighting coughing just to say that.
I was just going to say that was real. That probably wasn't even put on, right?
No, it wasn't. I unmuted and coughed.
As we were saying just on the other side of the room here in the podcast before we hit the record button, it took me 20 hours plus of not talking at all, of using sign language with my roommates here in Boston, to get my voice to this level of health. So that's where we're sitting right now. We're very, very sick. Anton Dinoj, our third in Vegas, was supposed to join us, but he's back in Romania after almost a full 30 hours of airport time and in-air travel. So he very sensibly took today off, and I sound even worse than usual. Even if I were healthy, I would not sound as good because my Blue Yeti microphone, which I normally use for the show, is somewhere in Phoenix, thanks to United Airlines. Well, let's not get into that.
Amazing service.
Outstanding customer service. Well, no one wants to hear my busted voice as the central host for this podcast, so for this one, we're doing something a little different. I've asked Jaime Rivera to step in as our chief lion tamer for this episode. He'll be asking Taylor and me questions about our time at America's largest consumer electronics trade show, and Taylor and I will take turns talking and drinking tea. So with that, Jaime, I'll ask you to take it away, please.
This is going to be very interesting. So I'm usually forced to have to speak quickly for the Pocketnow Daily just to keep it under 3 minutes. And now you guys are forcing me to do it slowly on the Pocketnow Weekly. This is going to be funny. But anyways, thank you.
Fast if you want.
Oh, thank you. I'll try that. But thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for the confidence. Before we begin this podcast, let's just start with one of the most basic and important topics. First of all, this is our final reminder about our Stitcher Awards. You know that you all have nominated us to be the top tech show of 2013. So make sure you follow the link in the description for details on how you can vote for us until January 13th would be the final day. So thank you very much for nominating us, and we hope to win. Hey, why not? Right?
Yeah, we have 3 days, so that means you can vote 3 more times.
Yeah, and if you just started listening to the podcast this year, please don't judge us on our 2 shows so far.
Yeah.
We've been sick for, rushed for, and it's just been a mess. And we're not even using the right mics today. So,
yes.
Listen to some of last year's podcast if you want to see what we're really about.
Michael lost his voice coming back from CES, and I woke up from a fever last night, and I think I had one about 20 minutes ago, but
yeah, it's pretty rough situation.
And I'm sucking on some halls and sipping tea.
Now, this is interesting because last year, Michael, we grabbed that plague when we arrived. You remember that?
Oh, yeah. And Jaime, you know what I didn't remember until getting there again today? Guys, when you go to Vegas and you're used to like a seaside environment, as Taylor and I are, with kind of humid air, when you go to Vegas, it's the desert. So any sickness that you have is compounded by the fact that you feel like you're breathing in this like lunar dust that's cutting your esophagus, cutting your windpipe, your trachea to shreds. And every morning I woke up in like horrible pain in my throat, not just because I was sick, but because it was the driest air I'd ever encountered. I hated it.
Lunar dust, only you would know with your Iron Man suit and everything. We don't know about those things. But hey, speaking of your Iron Man suit, I kind of heard that you guys had a lot of trouble trying to get there. So want to share that?
My God. Taylor.
I got there just fine.
Yeah, but you almost didn't though, Taylor. You almost didn't. Tell about that.
Yeah, so I flew from Charlotte to Detroit, and I had a connection to Las Vegas out of Detroit. And I was sitting on the plane, and I saw ice start covering the windows, and I thought, they're not going to let us take off. Well, they took us to the ice pad and de-iced the plane, and as they de-iced it, it got frozen again, and they had to de-ice it twice. So the temperature dropped. Well, the temperature dropped really quickly, and I don't know, it froze twice, and I thought we were never going to get out of there. It delayed us by about an hour, and then we took off, and shortly after we took off, from my understanding, most of the flights out of there were canceled or delayed.
Yeah, like 200 flights.
Yeah, so I barely got out of there, and then Michael, I made it to Vegas just fine, but Michael was supposed to arrive 3 hours after I was, I believe.
And it was about 30 hours after you.
Yeah, but
what happened? What happened to your suit, Michael? Come on.
Well, I know, right? Well, it was too cold to fly in the Iron Man suit. No,
our original departing flights, I think, were, 30, 45 minutes apart?
Yeah, they were.
And I arrived in Vegas. He had not departed yet.
Yeah, the issue was that in America, in the Eastern Seaboard here, we had a massive snowstorm a couple days before I was scheduled to depart, and then there was an ice storm right on the heels of that, which is what Taylor started experiencing before he took off. So in between those two challenges, the airlines had all these passengers who needed to fly out from the holidays, which had just passed. So it was this kind of perfect storm of airline delays, which I understand. I mean, everyone, that's a massive challenge. But United handled it, in my experience, United handles most things really poorly. I've never taken off on time with this airline, or that's a bit of hyperbole, but probably 80% of the time it's accurate. I've never taken off on time. And I was standing in line next to someone who had double confirmed his flight in line, and they still gave his seat away. We were at the airport in Boston. I was there for 10 hours longer than I should have been, and I didn't even fly to Vegas. I was supposed to go to Houston at one point, then I was supposed to go to Phoenix, which is actually where my bag went, interestingly. And I ended up flying to Denver, staying overnight, watching stories on Twitter from Taylor and Anton drinking Jack in the hotel room where I was supposed to be, while I was at a Mexican bar in Denver called the Urban Sombrero. Drinking a martini by myself, and with everyone on Twitter expressing condolences of my situation. Then I had to fly to Ontario, California, a place I didn't know existed, and drive.
I know that place.
Well, it was beautiful, but then I had to drive 4 hours to Vegas.
4 hours. I was about to say, my God.
And then I arrived, and immediately we went into our ZTE briefing. And and by the way, I wore the same clothes all 4 days because my clothes were in my bag along with the Blue Yeti and whatever.
And your tripod and everything.
Oh, yeah, the tripod as well, yeah.
You can't really wash an iron suit anyways.
Well, true enough. So there was much more to it than that. I'm actually still waiting for my bag. But, it's, as they say, never talk too long about your travel plans because no one cares. The point is, it was a nightmare, but we got there, and we managed to cover a bit of the show before we had to leave absurdly early because our schedule was already messed up from the beginning. So
now I guess the biggest question that I have for you guys, after such an ordeal to get there, which is funny, I've been to CES twice. Mm-hmm. Oh God, don't let me remind you the first time I went there, because Brandon calls me up like 3 days before the show, and he's like, "Do you want to go to Vegas?" And Buddy, I had no clue what I was getting into. I was like, yeah, sure. I've never been to Vegas. Let's go. And he's like, no, you're going alone.
You went solo?
Buddy, why do you think last year I was so uptight about getting the car rental, about following the specific schedule the way we had it? Because I had such a terrible experience on my own that I was like, this is never happening to me again.
Absolutely.
Ever happening.
Yeah.
Well, next year I'm going to petition Tony to I would like to run CES. I would like to be the planner. I would like to be the guy who does everything front to back. Because Tony had enough trouble getting there and being there that he never wants to go again.
Yeah, I think there's a curse around CES
this year.
Not only does everyone get sick, but I've never had a great experience at CES either. I went twice. I never went by myself, but I was by myself for the first 2 times. I went with Phone Dog the first 2 years, and we just kind of split up and tried to do it that way. That didn't work. And then I took a friend, and that went way south very quickly.
Yeah. So
we ended up being your friends.
Yeah, you ended up being my friends.
I really had a good time last year, despite the fact that I was disappointed in the show. And we're going to get to what was shown at this show really, really quickly. But I want to say, thanks to everyone who consistently, we have some really awesome fans who kind of tweeted us, say, like, you guys did the best job at CES. I loved following your stuff. Thanks a lot. Even when everything is like crashing to pieces around us and we're like just churning out videos just to get them out, and really they're not ending up so great. So thank you to everyone who stuck with us through this very, very challenging experience. And we're sorry to have missed some of our friends like Hayato, who got
I was about to say, I saw Hayato's tweet. He was at the Sony booth with Marquez.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, when he finally got there, he got there days late too. But anyway, all this is accessory stuff. So let's move on.
So I guess the biggest question is, because I had this experience when I went to CES on my own, and then we had that experience last year. I was expecting more. I had so many expectations for the show, being the biggest consumer electronics show in the United States, at least. And it didn't really give us what we wanted, at least in the mobile space, which is odd, since the mobile space, I mean, all the keynotes are pretty much focused on mobile, and still that's the least that you see. So what did you guys see? Like, for example, we were hearing that a lot of it was going to be about wearables, and I'd like to hear about your experience with that.
Yeah, so I think in terms of wearables, I was very excited because I'm kind of a wearables nerd, and I really was excited to see what some companies were going to bring. But Taylor, why don't you tell them what we found when we went to the wrist zone?
Yeah. So Michael and I had this sort of disagreement. Well, okay, so it was an agreement, but a disagreement. Like, we were arguing over agreeing with one another.
Right, I want to make the point here. We were arguing about a specific smartwatch brand. I'm not going to say which one it was, but I wanted to go see it because a team member who wasn't with us at CES was really amped on this one specific smartwatch brand. I was like, I want to go see it. And Taylor was like, no, listen to that name. The brand name is crap. It's going to be crap. I'm like, Taylor, you're probably right. It's probably going to be crap, but I want to go see it to see if it's crap or if it's worth covering. And we had a big argument about that because we weren't really listening to each other. And then we ended up going to the wrist zone. And Taylor, what did most of it end up being?
Almost every single thing in that whole entire segment, which was, I think, 9 booths, 9 or more, every single one of them was a mock-up. There was only 1 or 2 working models.
No way.
And yeah.
No way.
Maybe 3 or 4. It wasn't 1 or 2.
There
were
at the very
fewer
least
than 50%.
Yeah, at the very least, the ones that were working were like, you take Pebble and you take most of the functionality of Pebble away, and you just display icon notifications. Mm-hmm. On an analog smartwatch.
Oh, so my God.
Like a quartz-powered analog, like the cheapest analog smartwatch analog watch you could see.
So the only notifications you got was like an SMS icon that said you had no, like, there's no point to it.
There is no point to it at all, definitely. Probably the only reason why I like the Pebble is I drive a lot during, I have to commute a lot. And for me, it's cool to not have to pull my to not have to pull my phone out to see what I just got. So I'm like, oh, it's Taylor. I don't have to respond to this. Let's keep going.
Oh, thanks.
Stuff like that. I find it cool. It's funny because I was such a naysayer about wearables. And, I do find the purpose to it. But if it's only going to give me an icon, come on, that's pointless.
Not just
that really is pointless.
Some of the designs were just total garbage. I mean, some of them were huge, much too big for a wrist.
There was one that's probably about half the size of the Moto X.
Oh yeah, well that's the one that everyone was begging us to look at. Like I was excited when I rolled up on it, and it was. I don't want to talk trash about a particular brand. Let's just not name it. But everyone was like, can you go see this one? And it's like, oh, yeah. And then I go there. I'm like, no, we're not going to cover this. This is, like you said, this is like an iPod Touch on a wristband.
I was about to say, guys, do you guys feel that the Pebble is a big watch? Because I don't find it big, the original one.
Well, Taylor got eyes on with the new one. But the old one, no, I don't think the old one is a particularly big watch, no.
What about you, Taylor?
Not on my wrist. On my wrist, it looks normal. On, like, my sister's wrist, it would look big. So that was, I think, the problem with it. And I think that might be the problem with the new steel, is that it's not very... It doesn't have a design that I think a lot of women will like. Whereas the original Pebble... I
was thinking... Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying the original Pebble was just very kind of neutral. This one looks very much like a men's watch. If you go into a Fossil and you... Yeah. There's a distinctive design difference between men's and women's watches. And I think this new Pebble after looking at it several times, I think that a lot of women will be turned away just because it looks very masculine.
Yeah, I was about to say, even with the original Pebble, I believe that, I don't know, I was thinking about that yesterday casually. I was driving and I was like, how do you give your girlfriend or your wife, how do you give her a Pebble? It's a big watch, regardless. I mean, all women's watches are small. And yeah, there is a trend in big watches lately for women, but these are all glam watches with like fake diamonds and stuff like that. And you don't really see that neither on this or on the Pebble Steel. But I don't know, speaking of the Pebble Steel, I don't know about you guys. First of all, Taylor, awesome interview with the CEO. I loved it. I was left really wanting that Pebble Steel, kind of like I want to sell my Pebble.
Yeah,
I want that Pebble Steel. But, for me, probably one of the biggest disappointments with the Pebble after using it for like a couple of days was, first of all, the fact that I ran out of memory. I started installing stuff and I was like, you're out of memory. And I was like, what the? I've only been using this thing for a day.
Yeah, so, it had an 8 app limit at the beginning. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's still there, but they did double the memory. So we said, and this was because I was told directly from Eric Mijakovsky, which is the CEO of Pebble. Yeah. He said double the RAM, and he was wrong. It's actually double the memory. So it's double the storage on the Pebble Steel. There is that, but the coolest thing I think is now that it's glass and you don't have plastic on top. It's Gorilla Glass.
Yeah, I find that Pebble Steel to be beautiful. I don't know about the listeners, but I find it beautiful.
Now, the biggest disappointment is that you can't really replace the bands on it. Like if you can, but you can't put just any old band on it because it doesn't have a standard. Yeah, so it's actually got this little centerpiece. And if you look at the video, you can see it, but you can't just put any band on it. Like I have some Fossil watch bands that I use, and I couldn't use those with Pebble Steel.
This is, I don't know, but for example, one of the biggest reasons why I couldn't swap the band on my watch initially was because of that centerpiece on the typical watch. Most of the, steel watches that I have the centerpiece. So I guess we would have to compare. But honestly, I find the design of that Pebble Steel and the wrist, to be so cool that I don't feel that I would need to replace it.
Yeah, so that's a good point because Taylor and I were making the point to each other at the show itself. We were like, wow, that was one of the original value adds of the first Pebble. Like you can put any band you want on it. But then again, with the first Pebble, you really needed to replace it.
You had to,
right.
Exactly.
It was such a crappy band it shipped with. Whereas with these, they actually look pretty good. So,
yeah.
Yes, but overall, I mean, another question that I had for you, Taylor, was, for example, I noticed that the new update to the operating system will allow for different services like ESPN or anything. But the question is if this is going to work on the old Pebble or just on the new one.
From my understanding, it will. That's why Eric and the team decided to make it that way. They wanted it to be backwards compatible, and they didn't want all of the developers' work up to this point to be negated. Kind of similar to how Apple does things. They didn't want to introduce a new UI or a new resolution to support or any of that. They wanted to make it basically a better-looking watch on the same hardware, the same platform. So it's all the same.
So rather than we can see this, I don't know if you guys mentioned this while I was getting more tea, but we can see this less as a reinvention of the first iteration of the product, but more like a refresh. Like this is what we would have done the first time if we had enough money.
Yeah, it was a polish, I guess. It was a polishing to the original product. I don't know. I'm really excited. The question is, do you find it and this, I asked this on the daily as the question of the day, and I got a lot of comments on that. But do you find it expensive at $250, $259, I think it is?
It's expensive, but I think it's worth it, mainly because I never felt this one was worth $150, not at least by the build and the strap.
Agreed.
This one you get two straps, and if you look up just a PVD watch strap, they range anywhere from probably $30 to $100.
Yeah, right. Mine was $100 at retail. Yeah.
Yeah. Mine was $80. I think I spent $80 on my PVD watch strap. So this is an entire PVD watch, or an entire machine still watch, and you add in the functionality, you add in the polish on it and the materials. It's definitely worth it.
And we're going to be talking about this again, I think. Taylor, we're getting one for review, right?
Yes, that's what I was told.
Excellent.
All of us?
Yeah, Taylor, we're getting 9 for review, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what Eric said.
Okay,
No, he was a really cool guy, very cool CEO. We sat down in a hotel suite.
Really down to earth. I loved your video, man. Awesome work.
He's a very cool guy. We met on the show floor several times. I met him last year, and he was just really cool. We talked about the watch bands that I have and the ones he has, and we actually had the same one, just different colors. But we were just talking back and forth. We were just hanging out, and it was really cool.
So unbelievably butthurt about that. Like, it's like I wanted to meet him last year at CES. We ended up not going to the Pebble event because we were double booked, and then like this year I was jazzed to meet him.
I can't believe we turned it down, Michael. I can't believe we were.
It's not my fault. I mean, we were, we got.
Yeah. That was a different type of event coverage, but yeah. I don't know. I'm very hyped up. Bottom line, I'm getting one, whether Taylor sends me one or not. I do feel, for me, it took me so long to buy the original Pebble, specifically because it looked like a toy for me.
And that's why they said they wanted to make this one, is that a lot of businessmen and professionals never wanted a plastic watch to wear, and this one is anything but cheap. It looks like a luxury watch, and that's awesome.
Cool.
But speaking of Pebble and how the original one was, we got a surprise. We had that ZTE meeting when Michael first arrived in Vegas. We got a surprise. We went in thinking, ZTE is going to have one phone or one tablet or one device. And we walked through the door and they had, 5 or 6 sitting on the table?
Yeah,
and they were
I actually knew there were going to be at least 3, but I was surprised with how they were built. But go ahead.
Yeah, there were 6 all brand new devices. And we didn't, 7 if you count the projector. We didn't know. Yeah, we were just like, what? We walked in planning to shoot a bunch of videos and have it out and ready to go. And it turns out we had a 30-minute meeting and 7 devices to cover. But they had a watch there. And it wasn't a consumer-ready product. It's like a beta. But that was what I went for first. Michael and Tony went for the phones. But I grabbed the watch and started looking at it. And I started flipping through the menus and looking at the hardware, and it was very nearly a Pebble ripoff. Like, the interface, everything about it was very much inspired by Pebble, if you will.
Yeah.
Except for it's like they took it out of the original Pebble hardware and put it in even crappier,
much worse hardware. Yeah.
Yeah.
They probably didn't cover this thing on video for a reason.
Yes.
They probably installed the operating system and just tried to demo their hardware, I guess.
Well, yeah, like it had the same menus, it had the same watch faces, it had pretty much all the same stuff, but it was very dumbed down in functionality, and the build quality was very bad, very poor. It had a single backlight, which was in the lower left corner, and all it did was shine really bright, and it was like one single light bleed, and that's all it was. There was no other backlight.
So they hastily added that it was reference hardware, and I think that was easily the most disappointing thing about the ZTE thing, because it was actually my first inkling that maybe this wearables thing wasn't really going to pan out too well for CES 2014.
Yeah, well, I would beg to differ in that the what's it, Iconia tablet or whatever?
Iconic phablet.
Okay, Iconic phablet. That was bad. It fell apart in my hand.
Right. So
and we're going to talk about ZTE coming a little later.
Yeah, that's right.
We're going to talk about ZTE a little later because I am quite curious, especially after reviewing the Nubia 5. But, I don't – the question is, was everything bad? Because I looked at that LG LifeBand Touch video of you guys, and I don't know. I like that concept. What do you guys think?
I don't know. I wasn't there for that because I was in the press room, feeling miserable and editing stuff. So, Taylor.
Oh yeah. You looked rough when we came back from that. But we shot the LifeBand Touch video, and it was really cool in that the hardware was completely unique in that it was an adjustable band that would fit just about any wrist. It was an open design, so it was only it was like a C shape, and it would just clamp onto just about any size wrist. And a single button to navigate, and then you would swipe. It was a touch-sensitive display, and you could swipe through different panels. But that was implemented horribly. The guy who was demonstrating it to us before we shot the video had trouble with it. I had trouble with it all throughout the video. And it took me, most of those CES videos, the hands-on videos. They took me maybe 10 to 20 minutes to edit. That one took me like an hour and a half yesterday, but just because I had to find footage where I wasn't just stumbling through the menus. Like it was bad, and I did leave some of it in there, but just to get the point across, to show how it worked, I had to search for footage that wasn't just me fumbling through everything. But yeah, it was cool. I liked it, but it's more of the same. It was like a less polished Fitbit or Nike Fuel Band. It was the same concept, and the coolest part, the only really truly cool part, was that it had a heart rate monitor, and it connects to some earbuds, which are Bluetooth, at least I'm told.
Those were cool. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the earbuds, they track your heartbeat through your pulse in your ear. So it was really cool. But other than that, it's very much the same as everything we've seen so far.
I don't know. I guess Pebble was the story again. I guess we could call it that way, because I don't know. I did notice that in your video, and then you guys didn't. I don't think you guys had a chance to talk about the Sony Smart Band, or because it was only a fitness thing again. I don't know. I guess I'm disappointed that a lot of people think that fitness has to be the way to go. Because, for example, that Nike Fuel Band, I'm extremely disappointed at the fact that I'm not going to pay $150 for something that's just for fitness, even though I'm a fitness buff. I don't know if you get my point.
I mean, I get your point. I'm not a fitness guy, obviously. Like, it's not something that I follow closely. Taylor was quite jazzed about seeing a couple of these things. LG wasn't the only one there. Sony had that Core thing where you slip it into a wristband, but I think the problem I have with a lot of these, just viewing it as someone who's frankly not at all interested in this stuff, is that no one has really gone too far afield from the Fitbit model. It's like, if I want something like this, why would I get like your crappy knockoff? Why wouldn't I just get a Fitbit? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what I felt about Sony's Core, is it is a Fitbit, like same exact idea. They're like, it fits in this band. The way they demonstrated it, they're like, it's this tiny little wearable pedometer, and it fits inside this band. And they presented it as if it was something completely, totally new that nobody had ever seen before.
I don't know. Moto Active, we remember the Moto Active. We remember so many tries. I mean, Nike has been like the only company that's really taken off with the fuel band concept. And still, honestly, I was going to buy a fuel band. And I was like, wait a second, the Pebble cost exactly the same amount of money. It's like, never mind, I'll get the Pebble. That was like the decision that made me get the Pebble. I was like, never mind, I'll get the Pebble.
Speaking of presenting existing stuff as new, I feel like that was the theme of this CES. Like, whether you're talking about friggin' watches or smartphones or features on other devices, like, I am so tired of people pitching me on stuff that's like, look, and it displays a notification right on your wrist, so you don't even need to take your phone out of your pocket. And I'm expecting the sentence to go on. I'm expecting there to be a clear differentiator, and there just isn't. And it's like, I understand you have to position this a certain way, but don't talk to me like I'm stupid. Don't talk to me like I'm not sitting here actively wearing a Pebble on my wrist and with a Galaxy Gear in my pocket. Like, stop. You know what I mean? Like, either innovate or acknowledge that, like, yes, it's like this other brand, but ours is better because here's why. Even if that's a bullshit reason, it's a lot better than just saying, like, hey, look, you can put this up to your head and you can actually talk to another person who's not even in the same room, like far away. That's what this mobile phone does. Isn't it incredible?
Something you'll appreciate, Jaime, straight from Eric Michikowski of Pebble. He said that in future versions of the software, they're going to focus a lot more on fitness. So it will negate the reason to have a Pebble and a Fitbit. But the funny thing that I realized noticed while I was at CES, just walking around and seeing all the people that I already knew, like Todd Hazelton of Techno Buffalo, I think Marquez maybe, and a bunch of other people. I just noticed everyone was walking around. They had a Pebble on their left wrist and a Fitbit on their right. I know John of Phone Arena, just a bunch of people had the same exact setup, and I thought it was really interesting and funny because it was just like, that's it.
So Michael was the only one with a Galaxy Gear there?
Yes, pretty much ever. No, Jess had one. Jess had one. Yeah. But she's a Samsung PR. Like, she has to.
Yeah. No, I got to say, the Galaxy Gear got an update right before I went to CES. I finally got the update that allows for real notifications. And, man, I got to tell you guys, if that thing had that software load on release, this thing would not have been crapped on as much as it was, because it's really very, very useful now.
Except for the fact that it's still very ugly.
I don't think it's ugly. I really think it's a good-looking piece of hardware.
I don't think it's ugly. It's funny, but I like it. I do like it.
It has a wart on the outside of its band.
Yeah, I know. Like, get over it, man. You know,
listen. The problem is you probably didn't have the childhood that Michael and I had, where we had to wear these calculator watches. You remember that, Michael?
Just so I could from Inspector Gadget.
Exactly. So, Taylor, you were born 10 years later, buddy. That's why for you this is like odd.
GTFO.
I gladly wore a calculator Casio watch. So thank you very much.
A data bank. I
feel like we've talked about this before. What's
I also had a watch that crowed like a rooster for the alarm.
And you're complaining about a watch with a wart? Come on, man. Come on. A wart that actually takes photos. A wart that actually takes photos. Come on, buddy.
0.3 megapixels? What? That doesn't even count.
Listen, and before we end the whole wearables section, I guess one of the things that I'm really looking forward to, because it was in the news, but I don't know if you guys were able to see it in the wrist section, was these Arcos watches that they're planning to sell for $50.
Yeah, I heard about it and I saw it, but I didn't get to see it on the show floor.
Because I wanted to see exactly how cheap these would be. Meaning, for $50, what exactly are we getting?
It's Arcos, so I wouldn't set my expectations too high. They make some decent stuff, but they never go above and beyond in terms of hardware. So don't get too excited over it.
Okay, guys, any final thoughts on wearables before we move on?
Yeah, I've got one. I am a fanboy for wearables, basically, okay? So I'm predisposed to giving any company that makes a wearable piece of technology the benefit of the doubt.
The smart socks. Uh-huh.
Sure, anything like that. No, I mean, really, even if it's absurd, I'll give it a second, because I think that is where a lot of the future lies. Even given that, you guys might think that there was a situation where it's like I was really campaigning hard to film something and the other guys shot me down. It wasn't that. Once I actually finally saw most of this stuff, I was like, no, there's no reason to film this garbage. So if the future, if the future is going to be in wearables, then the manufacturers have to step their game up.
Yeah, the only reason that we would have filmed any of that was so Tony could have video footage of the booth babes walking around with blazers and bras.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, Tony. Some things never change.
I was just going to say, at least he's consistent. Yeah.
Listen, and I guess this sounds like year 2011 tablets. You remember after the iPad was launched early 2010, and then everybody was scrambling to get tablets out of the market. And I don't know. I guess wearables right now are constrained in size. Like, I don't think they can make a smaller Pebble right now. I'm sure that they want to for women, for example, but I think that they're still constrained in size and in so many things. So I don't know. I was expecting a lot of stuff from wearables, but I know that a lot of people were caught on surprise by the Pebble.
Well, I think really the Pebble, I think if they made maybe a different shape, like an oval with a very thin wristband, I think it would appeal to a female demographic. And I really think that that's something that's achievable, but I think it's oversight.
My girlfriend begs me to ask the Pebble makers to pursue that avenue every time that I talk about Pebble with her. And she's not alone. I mean, really, that's a very, very important segment, and I always feel like it's weird and odd ground to try and talk on an all-guy podcast from an all-guy team about what women want in wearable tech, right? But I think that there are certain things that everyone can wrap their head around, and that smaller can sometimes be a lot better. And on wrists which are smaller than men's, by and large, a smaller watch looks better. So yes, a smaller Pebble is certainly called for, and I would be very surprised if on the next iteration of hardware there wasn't at least one smaller variant. So
yeah,
in hindsight, I wish I had asked Eric about it in person, but I had never. It didn't occur to me until going back and editing the video that this is very much a male-centric product.
Your girlfriend's going to kill you. How bad of you? How bad of you for not asking? How dare you?
She doesn't even have a smartphone. So
yeah.
Oh God, that is like the perfect girl, man. God,
that is not right. That is not true. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. I think the next category that I was really, really surprised But, from the more traditional companies, for example, obviously the big smartphone brands, but I don't know. I guess I was really surprised about these Samsung tablets. And this comes from a guy that hates Samsung tablets. But absolutely everything that I saw in your videos, I don't know. I noticed a lot of hype from you guys. I noticed a lot of excitement from what you were trying out with these tablets. So I really want to hear, but separately, let's talk first about the tablet itself. And I really want to know about that UI. I have so many questions about that.
So excitement is an interesting word. I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I was necessarily excited. I rolled up to that Samsung event starting to feel the sickness, and so I personally wasn't that jazzed. And I've got some other stuff, other reasons why I wasn't terribly excited to be there. But then I laid eyes on the product significantly later than I wanted to. And I didn't expect to be wowed until I saw the UI. And laying eyes on the UI was interesting. Now, you want to hear about the hardware first, Jaime?
Yeah, because I don't know. I'm sorry, but I do like the Galaxy Note 3. I do love this leather.
Nothing to be sorry about it.
Not everybody agrees. Everybody's like, oh, the plastic and everything. I feel that the Galaxy Note 3 is the most polished Samsung product made yet. And I like the fact that has now been brought to tablets. But I really, obviously, you reviewed the Note 10.1 2014, Taylor, but I haven't had the opportunity to actually hold one of these tablets. So I really want to get a feel from you guys.
Yeah, so let me say that all the smaller versions, like the Note 8, the revised Tab 8 Pro, the 10.1, the Tab 10.1 Pro, and then what's the other one?
Oh, don't lose yourself with the names. Come on.
All the smaller and mid-range ones, whatever. They're all just modified versions of what came before with the Note 3 backing. And interestingly, the faux leather and the stitching, which we thought was exclusive to the Note line, no, Samsung has now moved it out to the Tab line. And by the way, I said that in a lot of videos, and someone very intelligently called out the fact that the Galaxy Gear charger had that stitching. Yes, but the Galaxy Gear was made as an accessory specifically for the Note 3 when it launched.
Exactly.
So it made sense to have that stitching. But anyway, all that stuff. The tab's good for them. I liked it better when we thought of the tabs as sort of the lower end tablet line and the Note as the higher end. But now with the specs kind of all bleeding together and now the material bleeding together as well, that distinction is kind of evaporating. We're once again left in a world where the S Pen is the only meaningful differentiator.
Yeah, and why would anybody bother with a tab? Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. Why even bother making a tab if you have the Note line? Like,
exactly.
Just kill the tab line and make all notes. Like, that only makes sense to me.
Well, you guys don't know pricing yet, but I mean, unless the pricing is significantly different because of that Wacom digitizer, I don't really understand the point, as Taylor is as well. I mean, why don't they just make all their tablets stylus-based? And that would really boost them.
That would make it a simpler world. And that's something, actually, we might see as Samsung moves forward and into this world where they're no longer making record profits. All of a sudden they have a fall off, and it's like, wow, we should simplify our product line. We saw this with HTC, where they were cranking out a bunch of phones, and all of a sudden they fell on their face, and now they had to make one phone, and blah, blah, blah. But I do think that there are some component issues. I don't know how much the Wacom digitizer costs to integrate, nor do I know how much an S Pen is just to make with its inductive stuff inside. I can't imagine it's that significant, but maybe it is,
Could be.
So who knows? But the point is, the only thing that blew me away, hardware-wise, was the 12.2. And the reason for that is the size. I mean, it really is huge. No, you can't hold it with one hand comfortably. It's heavy enough. But the fact
unless you're Tony. Okay.
Unless you're Tony, exactly. But the screen, the very large screen is compelling. I mean, if you're willing to give two hands to the operation, having a little bit more screen real estate, actually a lot more screen real estate, if you put the 10.1 next to it like we did in that one video, you can see the difference.
It's 20% more screen space, definitely.
It's impressive.
Yeah, I'm going to go the opposite direction and say that my favorite was the Tab Pro 8.4.
I was about to say, that was my favorite one as well.
Yeah, it looks very nice, and the reason that I think it's my favorite is the display. Because it's 2560 by 1600.
It's the same resolution on those 8.4 inches, exactly.
Yeah, it's incredible, and it looks great.
I'm lost here. There wasn't a note. I'm just crazy. These names have to stop, Samsung, please. This is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I love that they introed the Pro names ostensibly to simplify things, and all the time I'm freaking stumbling like crazy on the floor there trying to figure it out. Like the ordering of the naming it's just so confusing. Galaxy Tab Pro 12.2. Is that?
But
no, Galaxy Note Pro 12.2.
That doesn't sound as bad as iPad Mini with Retina display, but anyways, I was ranting about it, and I'm like, which tablet has the longest name? And I'm like, well, the iPad. Shoot, I don't know. I guess that. So I'm confused. There is no Galaxy Note Pro 8.4 or none in plans. You didn't hear anything about that?
Not yet. Well, they never talk about stuff that's planned or planned or not. However, we speculated on site that the Note 8 would see a reveal at MWC, just like the Note 8 last year saw a reveal at MWC. So exactly. I'm sure they'll come out with one, and that's the one I would be waiting for personally, because I like the existing Note 8. I hate its software. But can we talk about the software?
Please, by all means. That's another question that I have. When it comes to software, this is like, I don't know. It had never occurred to me that anybody would come up with an Android UI that would look like this. And this may sound a little fanboyistic, but I really like it. I really like the way they reimagine how you're supposed to use a tablet.
Totally.
Tell me about it.
Totally.
Tell me about it.
It's a little like, it's not like Flipboard because the animated stuff is not the same. It's like Samsung's News Magazine app that was Flipboard powered.
Which I hate.
Which I hate too, because it's slow and it always takes forever to pop up. But imagine if that is your interface, and you can swipe between these tiled pages, which make intelligent use of the screen while also looking pretty reasonably good looking. It's not the best looking UI I've ever seen, but it is certainly worlds ahead of what they were doing before. Mm-hmm. So there's that, and it's responsive as well on the Tab devices, much more so than the Note devices. What?
Yeah, how was performance? Because I actually didn't get any hands-on time with the software.
Yeah, poor Taylor was stuck over in the corner of this Samsung lounge, like drinking cocktails and editing while Tony.
So you're giving me some memories right now, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
You remember me sitting on the floor in the Sony booth? That was like crazy.
Oh yeah, you were drinking beers and editing. It was great.
Thank you.
But no, so we found the software very responsive on the Tab devices. On the Note iterations, there were persistent stumbles. So yeah, I don't know if the Note ones are just the more abused models or whatever happened, but in any event, the software is reasonably responsive for how much it's showing you at one point. There are all these different kind of tiles. People can call it a ripoff on Windows. People can call it a ripoff on Flipboard, but it's not. It's something that's totally new. It just happens to have a lot of squares of varying shapes. And
it looks very dull to me.
Yeah, it's not exciting. It's exciting in that it's not the old TouchWiz. That's why it's exciting. But in and of itself, Taylor, I agree with you.
Now, one question, Michael. Are these, like, for example, I would notice that each of these different display how would we call these mock-ups or ambiances? I mean, what were they? Meaning, could you have like a business area where all of your business stuff is in one on one page, and then on another one you have your personal stuff? Is it with that mentality?
It's not. I don't think it gives you the capacity to name the pages, but you could do that. Yeah, if you wanted to just throw all your work stuff on one page, all your personal stuff on another, and all your kids stuff on another one, you can absolutely do that.
Yeah, because probably one of my biggest, I like that about, and this is going to sound funny, but I do like that about iOS. Like, for example, I can, on Windows 2, I know that this is all fitness stuff. Windows 3 is all personal stuff and that. But with Android, I'm always lost in the app tray. I'm always lost trying to find what I want. And yeah, I do that in the different Android windows through widgets and stuff, but obviously there is this limitation of the amount of windows you can have. So the question is there a limit to the amount of panes you can have in this UI?
I don't know if there's a limit, to be honest with you. We didn't get a brief. We were just kind of left to muddle through it ourselves. So I don't know. We will find out if we get the devices to review, and we'll see.
We will. And last question, how skeuomorphic was it? Because the rumors are that Android 4.4 is being prepped for the Galaxy S4 already, and part of the leaks were the fact that a lot of the UI elements are losing their skeuomorphism.
or the photorealism.
Yeah,
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
There was definite effort made to reduce some of the more like real life switchy components. Like there weren't like toggle switches or sliders or things like that I could see. It was flatter. They did some cool stuff with the toggles up in the notification tray where they switched them from square to round. I know that sounds like a really minor thing, but it does change.
It makes a difference.
It makes a difference. I don't know if it makes a lot of sense considering the rest of the UI is square, but it does. It just looks better somehow. I don't know. You know, this is something that we've been begging for a long time. Samsung,
Now that we have it.
yeah, right. Now that we have it, it's like we have to look at it and see how well it works. Is it something I would call beautiful? No. Is it something that looks functional and intelligently takes advantage of this huge canvas size, particularly on 12-inch? Yeah, it does, and I'm excited to try and use it.
I guess the reason why I'm excited is particularly because of that. Every single tablet UI is designed with a phone in mind and not with a tablet in mind. And I guess that's really what disappoints me about the iPad, for example. I mean, what's the point about having that amazingly beautiful, whatever canvas you want to call it, if all I'm using is a bloated phone?
Yep, agreed. So I think this is the most exciting part about the whole situation. And we've seen some leaks indicating that the smartphone software design may go in that direction recently for Samsung, so that's even more exciting.
Yeah, that's part of the leaks. But, you know, speaking of the bloated, non-bloated whole mentality, now that we finished talking about Samsung, I'm really interested in these Sony phones that you guys looked at. What was your experience? I think only Taylor was with them, right?
Actually, that is not true. Sorry, I was on mute while I was typing. That is not true. All three of us were there. Taylor was doing some of the filming for us. Tony and I each had spent some time with the new Sony smartphones. We didn't see any new tablets. We just saw two new smartphones, right? The Compact and the Z1.
The Z1 Compact and the Z1S, which, I don't know, I still have my Z1. I even forgot which Z1. The ZL is the one I have. But I don't think you've reviewed a Sony phone, have you, Michael?
That is correct. I've only reviewed Sony tablets, and I did a re-review on the Z Ultra.
Yeah, you need to probably review one of these because I don't know. I feel that Sony. I'm not really a fan of Sony's UI, but I do like their phones. Like I do love the feel of their phones. I find them extremely elegant and minimalistic, and I really can't wait to hear what you guys think about these two.
I'm not a fan of glass on both sides. That I think that ship has sailed, and I just don't like that. But I found it hilarious that throughout the announcement, I guess it was the president of Sony Mobile, or maybe it was the CEO of Sony, I don't remember. But they kept saying that it was the best camera experience on a waterproof smartphone.
Smartphone. Yeah, very good clarification.
Yeah, not just the best camera experience on the smartphone, but the best camera experience on a smartphone that's waterproof.
That's how it was phrased. Importantly, that's how it was phrased, because we were standing there in a circle with like Marquez and Austin and John from Phone Arena, and we had a whole bunch of good friends around, and every time he said that, like, the best camera experience on a smartphone, and we're all like, wait, well, hold on, what? And then that's waterproof. It's like, oh, yes. And he did it like 3 times. It was like he was trolling the crowd. It was very funny. But I can't argue with it. I mean, my only argument would be like, well, was the GS4 Active really that bad a camera? No, it wasn't.
Well, Sony cameras aren't really that good, and it's such an irony for me. I really don't understand. They've adopted Carl Zeiss better than anybody on their point-and-shoot cameras. They make the BSI sensors for almost every single smartphone OEM, and they can't get good photographs out of their cameras. I don't understand it.
Yet most of us here at Pocketnow prefer Sony cameras.
Seriously, I love my NEX. I go crazy over my NEX every single time, and still they can't figure it out. Go ahead.
Yeah, at CES we had 2 handy cams, so 2 prosumer handy cams, an NEX 5N and an NEX F3.
Yep.
And I mean, you can't say we don't like Sony cameras. They make great cameras.
No, I mean we filmed
not on their smartphones.
We filmed all CES last year with my 5N, and it was just
unless the qualifier is that those smartphones are waterproof.
Right, exactly. So to talk about the phones themselves, I mean, I hadn't laid hands on a Z1S before. I want to make an important clarification to your daily, Jaime. I love that you said, like, yeah, apparently it's just like the Z1S, but this one's plastic. I'm like, well, it's not plastic. It's still glass, but it's got a plastic frame.
Yeah,
it's not an aluminum frame anymore. So it feels fine in the hand. It didn't feel any less rugged. I mean, as rugged as a glass phone can be. It certainly didn't feel any more flexible or anything like that. It felt fine. I think the only thing is, it was for T-Mobile, and the storage was boosted, and there's a couple little things. So that one didn't excite me as much as the compact, which I really liked. I think we've all been wanting a flagship-level smartphone in a smaller footprint for the hand. And not only did Sony do that, but it also included a screen, an IPS display, that doesn't have the side-on visibility problems of some of its previous, devices. So I think the compact is the one that I would be much more excited personally to review.
Okay. I can't wait to see the compact as well. I don't know. The problem is I keep getting used to the Galaxy Note 3. I don't know why.
Well, I want to say that the Galaxy Note 3 was my show phone once again. Usually the Note line provides my daily driver for trade shows. And this year, Samsung gave us some swag after their event, and I got a Galaxy Note 3 spare battery. I actually got 2 of them. And that's
thank you. You want my shipping address?
Absolutely. Because I can't use them now that I'm not doing a show, and you're about to be doing MWC. So they saved my butt, for real, because even on a Note 3, which has a massive battery, I blew through it in about...
No, and the problem with CES, I wrote Tony, and I was like, Tony, the power had just gone out. So the power had gone out, and apparently the cell phone towers were not working in the sector where I was. So it was only on edge connectivity, and I'm like, Tony, my network is down. I'm a little screwed right now. So he's like, yeah, join me. You're probably in Vegas right now, aren't you? Because the network. It's funny. Did you guys use Verizon this time? Because the first time that I was at CES, Verizon was like the savior, but then last year it was AT&T. How was your experience with that?
T-Mobile was a joke. I had,
I'm sorry,
I had the Moto X.
I'm sorry, T-Mobile, but it always is.
Yeah, I love T-Mobile here in Charlotte. It's fantastic here, but in Vegas, I had LTE, and my data speeds were, I think, 0.3 down and 0.3 up.
We had meant to use Verizon, but the Verizon SIM we were planning on using ended up in my bag with the tripod in Phoenix. So we didn't end up using Verizon. We were mainly on AT&T the whole time, and AT&T actually served us pretty well. We were able to tether a few times and upload some videos that way. And what was the other thing that we were trying to do? We didn't have a Sprint one. Something else. Oh, right. Well, any internet connection was better than the Ethernet cord snaking out of the back of the TV in the Luxor.
Oh, yeah.
Which I never want to stay in again.
So wait a second. The Luxor still doesesn't have Wi-Fi?
Of course not. Why would it? Why would an Egyptian pyramid
Why
have
would
Wi-Fi?
an Egyptian pyramid have Wi-Fi? Seriously.
Oh, dear
The Wi-Fi worked up until you got to the door to the room.
Yeah, you have Wi-Fi in the hallway if you want it.
Yeah.
No, I stayed at the Aria the first time I stayed there, and Wi-Fi was like state of the art. It was up to the point where, so you remember, Taylor, about the whole USB dongle for LAN connection at the press room at Vegas, right?
Oh, yeah.
You remember that? Well, the whole story behind that was that the first time that I went to Vegas, I had just bought the MacBook Air. I had no clue that there was a USB to LAN dongle, and I went to try to upload videos at the press room, and it was just so bad that I had to film everything during the day and then come to the hotel to upload everything at night at the hotel room.
Yeah.
It was that bad. It was that bad.
So thankfully, we didn't deal with too many of those issues this time around. The press room is all right. I mean, we weren't delayed by days on most videos, except for the batch of Samsung videos, I think, that we had to go overnight with. Oh, no, we tethered and we uploaded those overnight, didn't we, Taylor? Yeah.
Yep.
So AT&T was good on us until the show started, and then no network has a chance to survive.
No, and I hate how they throttle you. It's like they know you're uploading a YouTube video, and they start throttling you.
That's exactly what happens, I think. Yeah.
I hate that.
You get 100,000 people or 150,000 people in one building all using AT&T or Verizon, and it all just crashes.
It's bound to be a problem. But anyways, let's try to talk about the smaller brands. I mean, you guys had some time with ZTE and Huawei. Who wants to talk about, aside from all the current talk about ZTE and their whatever smartwatch, how about the phones? I mean, I don't know. You sent me that Nubia 5 and I reviewed it, and I was like, man, if this phone would stand on its own, it wouldn't be that bad. But for example, Michael, you were excited about the optical image stabilization on the Nubia 5S, and probably one of my biggest disappointments with the 5 is that everything was overexposed. Okay. Just so overexposed. I was like, man, I look like a zombie in this photo.
Go ahead, Taylor.
I was going to say they showed us some example photos, and I took some sample photos myself with the Nubia 5S, and it was from what I could see, it took phenomenal pictures and video. I guess I don't know how much editing they did in post, but which is probably a lot. But the phone itself and all the camera software and optical image stabilization, at least to me, made the Nubia 5S at least a contender in a market where it's usually not. And that's a flagship market.
No freaking question. Absolutely. The 5S was a big surprise for me. I mean, with the Grand S2, we knew what we were expecting. We were expecting some kind of gimmicky voice control stuff, and it's like, okay, whatever, we'll talk about that in a second. But with the Nubia line, my expectations had been set a little higher thanks to your positive experience with the Nubia 5. Yeah. And seeing the 5S with its optical image stabilization, that's always a plus for me. You know I'm a big OIS fan. But also, in concert with hardware camera key, okay, very nice.
Yeah.
But that software suite, I mean, that viewfinder software, which incorporates the artificial horizon that I've been asking for years on a smartphone, in addition to the independently targetable, like, white balance, focus, and exposure. I mean, it's just great. Like you end up feeling like you're looking through a fighter jet's heads-up display.
Let me make a confession right now. So I was watching Michael's video as I was annotating it, and he's like, "Oh, and so you can drag this and drag this and drag this," and I was like, "Wait a second. So that's what that was for."
Oh,
that's what happens when you don't review phones that often. So I did see these things on manual mode, but I was like, whatever. This looks really cool, but I had no clue what it was. I seriously had no clue what it was.
I don't think the Nubia 5 had the white balance control though.
Yeah,
it did.
The 5 and the 5 Mini or the 5S Mini also lacked white balance. Like you could do focus and exposure, but you couldn't do white balance independent. So
I'll go check the Nubia 5. But I was, obviously the review was up a long time ago. I was like, oh man, okay,
no, that's okay. Like because they were really pushing it on the 5S, and our contact at ZTE was telling us before we saw this, he was like, I carry a competitor's phone as my personal line or whatever, but my business line I carry a 5S. And I take most of my photos with the 5S, and I'm like, I heard this, and I was like, instantly, like, no, that's got to be that's BS, man. You're BSing me. And then I saw the software, and I saw the output, and wow, man, that's a solid camera.
Yeah, interesting.
I'm really excited to review that one. I want to review that one or the 5S Mini.
You get the 5S Mini, I get the 5S. Deal?
No, that sounds like some bullshit.
Nah.
Either way we go, I think I'll be pleased. The 5S Mini does not have the OIS, but it has a great feel in hand in that it is small without sacrificing too much in the way of specs. And, these devices
it's matte finish
pretty well. And nice chalky matte back. It was great.
That was my biggest complaint. That was my biggest complaint of the Nubia 5S is that it's that glossy hyperglaze finish that I just don't like.
Yeah, which is dumb. Did they have a matte version? Go ahead, Jaime.
All this sounds like if you guys are sending me that Grand S2. Oh man! All right.
Yeah. So the Grand S2. So this was one of those examples where like we're being pitched features that is like it's like they're new, but they're not. Like using your voice to take a photo and all this stuff, but there's a cool voice integration feature on the Grand S that I liked a lot, which is voice unlock. You can train it. You can train it to learn any phrase, and then you use that phrase to get into the phone, which is cool. I mean, I think.
But is that a voice recognition thing or just the phrase recognition?
It's a voice recognition thing. So conceivably somebody else cannot unlock it.
Well, my father's got my exact same voice, so that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we couldn't test it because the one in the press room wasn't working right, and then the one on the trade floor, it was just so noisy. Because true to form, like at every trade show, we go to film something on the show floor, and 2 seconds after we start the video, one of the booth
ladies and gentlemen,
over here
look
to
over
take a basketball shot and
we'll paint your balls.
Yeah.
I'm like, seriously, this sounds so Ron. This sounds so Ron Burgundy. He's like, stop what you're doing right now. Yeah. Pay attention.
Are you shooting video? Good. We'll interrupt. And
there was one moment I was shooting. I was holding the camera, and Michael was holding up the Nubia 5S Mini, and we were shooting an intro, and he was talking in the middle of the sentence. he just stopped and had dropped his head, and I didn't hear it. I wasn't sure what she was talking about. But this woman over a loud PA system was like, "We'll paint your balls." Just so loud. I have no idea what the context for that
It
was.
must have been like a basketball thing. Like you could get a custom painted basketball if you like took a business card or something. But I just heard it and I couldn't keep it together. It just fell right apart. But, that stuff aside, I think the whole story with ZTE and us, or at least ZTE and me, is that I went not expecting a lot. And what I saw wasn't, I'm not going to go crazy and say I want to carry this as my daily phone. I'm really that impressed. I don't know if that's the case yet, but we saw some really compelling stuff from a company we're not necessarily used to seeing that from.
Yeah.
And that was enough for me to kind of take notice and be like, hey, it's good to see a small brand, a smaller brand making good.
Well,
an unknown U.S. brand, because they're not small in China.
Exactly right.
They're largely prepaid. They were saying that they're second or third prepaid in the U.S.
Well, here's the deal. For example, in emerging countries like where I live at, prepaid is everything here. It is everything in such a way. Well, people here have bad paying habits, and because of that, they make prepaid actually compelling. They make it so good that you just want to take it.
Sure.
That's why. But
I don't mean to be so Americentric. I don't mean to call ZTE a small company, but in the U.S., its presence is not at all visible.
It's completely irrelevant right now. Obviously,
most of the time, yeah.
They have a lot of work, but probably one of the companies that has been striving for some presence, and I still don't see it, is Huawei. How was your experience with those Ascend phones?
Yeah, this is another one where Taylor and Tony were covering the event because I wasn't there yet. So hit us with the knowledge there, T.
Well, Tony's opinion and my opinion of Huawei's Ascend Mate 2 are vastly different. He really liked the phone because it was big with very, very minimal bezel and a 4,050 milliamp hour battery, which you can use to charge another phone with. So it has reverse charging, which we learned after the fact that wasn't as impressive or innovative as it seemed, because you can do it with pretty much anything that uses or is compatible with on the go. But still, he really liked it, and the one thing he didn't like was the hyperglaze finish, or the very glossy plastic finish. I, on the other hand, found it to be very cheap. It might weigh, and I'm going to try to look this up really quickly because we estimated, but
probably one of the or did you find what you're looking for?
No, I did not.
Probably one of the things about Huawei, it's just, for example, and actually one of the Pocketnow viewers on YouTube corrected me when I was talking about the Nubia 5's UI and the fact that there isn't any app tray. I didn't actually know that was a Huawei thing. I didn't know that it was actually something that Huawei had started and that ZTE had pretty much taken upon themselves to rip off.
The lack of an app drawer, you mean?
Yeah, the lack of an app drawer.
That was a MIUI thing that kind of bled into other manufacturers.
Yeah.
Right.
So this phone, this can't be right. It says it weighs 202 grams.
That can't be right.
There's no way that's right, because this phone feels like you expect it. You pick it up and you expect it to feel like, a Galaxy Note 2, which is still a very light phone for its size. But this thing feels like the Galaxy S4 or Galaxy S3. Like, it's that light, but it's still a 6-inch phone.
Yeah, everyone is parroting the same old 202 grams. It really feels like it's no more than 150.
Yeah, I very highly doubt it's actually 202
which is amazing considering a phone with a battery that big. Because really, the component that's actually the heaviest on the phone is the display and then the battery.
I mean, the battery. Yeah. The fact that they were able to cram in a 4,000 milliamp hour battery into a device that actually does feel as light as that thing. Because I got a little heft of it on the show floor. And I think that's even counting the frickin' cord and the security device attached to it. It felt light. So,
God,
it's crazy, man. It felt unless I was holding the wrong phone. I mean, it could have been, but I don't know.
It was probably a hollow demo unit that they had there. I just didn't tell you that.
Yeah, with like a single screen and a backlight through like a gel.
Now, a question that I have for you guys is, obviously we always get this impression after every show, but do you think that Huawei or ZTE are going to make, something? Do they have products that'll give them some perspective in the United States this year? Or do you think it's going to be just another year where they're just become another company that's unknown?
Well,
Taylor got the full story on this, so I'm going to let him answer. But just from what I saw on the trade show floor, no, I don't see anything. Even if there were no troubles between Huawei and the U.S. State Department, I wouldn't see any of these devices being compelling enough to like hit the ground running here in the States.
no, both companies were talking about U.S. relationships and trying to build those and become a bigger player in the U.S. But I don't think this generation of hardware will launch them into any formidable or competitive position in the U.S. in the next year or so. Now, that said, I don't know if I want to use the Nubia 5S as my daily driver, but I would love to try it out. Just because I'd like to see an Android phone with a great camera, not just an okay camera. And you guys might say the Galaxy S4 has a great camera. I don't believe it does. And I can't speak to the G2's camera because mine was a defective unit. So I really haven't used an Android phone that I've really just fallen in love with the camera with. So if I can get that sort of camera experience out of an Android phone, I will be very happy.
So the G2 camera was actually very good, especially in low light. I guess whenever you had good lighting, it was a little undersaturated, just a little bit when you compared it against something like the iPhone 5S.
Wait, are you talking about the G2?
Yeah.
I found the opposite. I found it oversaturated, and especially in low light, where like I was at a concert.
Oh, no. In low light, I did find actually, I didn't find any issues in color accuracy. It was usually when I was probably at a Denny's with the kids or something, and I would take a picture of them, and I would just compare it to the iPhone 5S. And I don't know why. They didn't look bad at all. I'm not calling them bad. I just found more color, more richer color on the iPhone.
Yeah, I mean, maybe versus the iPhone, but I always found the G2 to be pretty highly saturated. But yeah, Taylor, I get your point. I haven't really necessarily fallen in love with a lot of Android shooters, but you know.
Yeah, and now that I'm used to carrying the Moto X as my daily driver, my expectations for image quality is severely crippled. Like, yes. Oh god, that camera's so bad.
Yeah,
but I love the phone, but the camera's awful.
Going back to my original question at the beginning, disappointed or enthusiastic about CES this year, guys? What do you think?
So. I'm very neutral to it. There were only a few things that I really got excited for, and that's Pebble Steel, the Nubia 5S, and maybe the Note or Tab Pro 8.4.
Yeah.
How about you, Michael?
You know, I think this year's CES, last year, after I wrapped up my first ever CES of my life, I wrote a piece called, like, the best, worst show ever. Because I was excited to be there last year, but there was almost nothing that got me excited personally. This year, there was more. The wearables sector disappointed me completely, with the exception of Pebble. And there weren't as many smartphones that I would have liked to have seen. But really, there was some cool stuff here. And ZTE being the pleasant surprise it was, the Samsung, the 12.2 and the new UI being really cool, and a couple other things really, you know, it provided enough reason to be there. And I'll speak a little bit more to the rest of the show in a piece of listener mail that we got in a second. But I'd like to have covered more this year, but unfortunately it was horrible circumstances. So
go ahead, my friend. Come on.
I was going to say that I posted on social media for people to send in their questions, and one of the questions that was asked the most, of course, was the most generic question ever, is what was your favorite thing at the show? And honestly,
I was about to say that. Go ahead.
Yeah. My favorite thing actually was not any mobile tech product. I got to see, and I was probably about a foot or two away from the new Lamborghini Veneno.
I knew you were going to say that.
Oh god, that car, man. Oh. So it was $4.5 million car, only one of 9.
I wish Tony was on the show, because then
I was about to say, so Taylor's going to talk about cars, you're going to talk about some wearable, and then Tony's going to talk about the models, Russian models that we use.
No, that's what Tony would normally do.
Camaros.
Yeah, no, Tony and this was CES for me. Walking around with Tony and Taylor, walking around Vegas, being in the middle of a conversation, and every 2 minutes having one of them interrupt the conversation, whatever it was, to point at some god-awful car 50 feet away. Yes, the Camaro. And I'm like, oh, shut up. I don't get any of these cars. Yeah, whatever it was. It didn't matter. You guys were always pointing out some piece of four-wheeled trash that I had no interest in whatsoever, and then I had to go film all y'all for footage that you didn't end up using in the wrap-up.
Yeah, you didn't send it to me, but
you didn't ask for it.
You should have sent it to me anyway. But yes,
all right.
the Lamborghinis and Ferraris and Rolls Royces.
Let's move on for the love of God.
Yes, please. I'm sorry, Taylor, but I don't care either. I am a car fan. I just, the problem is, and for example, one of the questions was, what's for example, Nathan Kiroff on Twitter is asking, what is your sleep time at CES? And he's giving us a smiley face. And,
what time? What's the question?
What is your sleep time at CES? So how much do we sleep?
Oh, sleep time.
I can actually...
yeah, we can tell you.
Yeah, I have a number for that, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, Taylor, fire
Taylor
away.
was using his Fitbit app to monitor his sleep.
Please, enlighten us.
So actually, the Fitbit app is giving me crap.
Okay.
Oh, no. It's not. If you look at Sunday, which was the day that I flew out, no sleep logged. So I stayed up the entire night before flying to CES because I had to prepare for the show. So I didn't sleep any the night before. The first night there, which I had actually had over a fifth of Jack Daniels with Tony because he insisted on finishing the bottle, I got 5 hours and 56 minutes, and I woke up feeling like trash.
That's good, actually.
It is good.
So the next night, the sleep time was great, but that was because I was buzzed. But the next day, which was Tuesday, Michael and I both stayed up till about 4:30 in the morning editing video and uploading. And then we turned around and woke up at 8 something maybe.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, my total sleep time that night was 3 hours 24 minutes, and then the last night we all slept in a little bit, and we got 6 hours and 55 minutes, and that was So our total sleep time for the show was 15 hours, maybe.
So, for example, I was asked on another Twitter question, why didn't I go to CES this year? And I was like, oh God, you have no idea what you're telling me. Like for me, so I just moved into to the old city where I was born, and so I've had such crazy times moving here and setting up and everything. And for me, honestly, I go to CES because it's cool to be there because of what we do, but it's not cool to do it. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say, Taylor.
Taylor still doesn't get it that he left.
No, I had to mute because I've been dying over here.
Stop coughing, man. Yeah. Stop coughing. But I don't know. I don't know if you guys get it, but it's cool to be there because of what we do, but it's just so complicated. It is just so difficult to cover CES. Like, for example, when I was asked, I was like, hey, if I could do Barcelona this year, I'll do Barcelona. Because MWC is everything that we cover. So even though there's more work, we don't have to look for it. It is right there.
Yeah.
Whereas in CES, you're like, oh my God. So we have Huawei today. Oh God, just pull up a map. You're like, okay, Huawei is in the South Hall North. At South Hall North, that doesn't sound right, but
it's like South Hall 3, booth 15,600.
Okay, so each of these halls is the size of 2 football fields. So have you any idea how much walking you have to do just to cover one booth? Because they're all scattered. I wish they had every mobile company in one section, but they don't.
Yeah,
no,
and so
one booth is Panasonic. The next booth is I don't know, like Google. The next booth is
pick a washing machine company.
No, I'm serious, and we're not even talking about the cesspool of CES as well.
The CES
and Samsung, LG, Panasonic is another. All these major companies that do a lot more than just phones. Each one of their booths was probably the size of a football field itself.
Yeah, the word booth completely fails to encapsulate it. Like it's more like an arena.
And Samsung's is always one of the biggest booths, but there are always so many people in there. Like
Oh God, yeah, it looks like a concert. It really looks like a concert.
Yeah, it feels a lot more like a concert than a tech show. Yeah,
it's you really can't film. I mean, I remember. I'm serious. For me, I don't know. I like CES again because hey, you see all we see all the guys that do what we do, and it's cool to be there. I mean, you can't really be in this business and not be at CES, but that doesn't mean that we like it.
Yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, yeah, sure.
I still like it. I even though I was sick, I had a miserable time at CES this year because I was sick. I got there late, and there was a bunch of other crap wrong. But I still really liked being there. I liked it better than I like IFA. I liked it better than I like MWC because, one, I'm not staying at a tiny European hotel room with Tony making every excuse possible to smoke in the room with me.
With Tony taking up half the room already.
Well, actually, I take up a lot of space too, but like Tony smoking, he's very considerate, but he still smells like smoke all the time. Second of all, I can see more of my colleagues in the industry because of most of my friends in the press are American based, so I see more of them. And third, like even though I can't stand Las Vegas, it's still kind of a fun place to be. So
and you get your In-N-Out burger time. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't get any this time.
And we didn't get any this time because...
Taylor, you're lucky, man. You have no idea what Michael would make me go through just to go to that In-N-Out burger.
You were having a great time, Jaime. You were drunk off your butt, and you were having a great time. Admit it. So
you were drunk. I remember that.
What other Twitter questions can we answer here? There's a good one. I like this one. There's a good one from Mark D. In parentheses, Mark Dan the man. What do you think Samsung's new interface will look like on smartphones? Well, we have a pretty good indication of what that might be if we believe the leaks coming from EV Leaks, which we have no reason not to. I think that this interface that we saw on the new tabs and notes is very well suited, uniquely well suited for tablets. How it will translate to a smartphone, I have no idea. I'm sure that Samsung will do it semi-intelligently. We will wait and see. I am optimistic, though. I think that there's almost nothing they could do that wouldn't be an improvement. You know, I can't stand TouchWiz the way it is now. Every time I have to use a Samsung device, I get more irritated at it, and exclusively because of the software. In fact, I told a Samsung rep that at the booth when we were checking out the Galaxy Camera 2, which we didn't talk about on this show, and which we won't talk about on the show because, really, whatever. But,
is there really anything to talk about? Come on.
Not much,
Let's go.
No.
Let's continue.
Selfie mode. But the point was they were asking for my feedback, and I just kind of wrapped it all up after 3 minutes of talking with, as usual with Samsung, my problem isn't with the hardware, it's with the software. And that's always been my issue. So, there we go. I hope this revision comes out nice. I'm fairly certain it will, because I really think the company has a solid grasp on what it needs to improve on. And now I think it has a motivation to do so. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's just sad that Tony's not here because he would trash it all the way.
I don't know. Tony was half enjoying his S4 when he didn't want to throw it into the street.
I was about to say, how was Tony in Vegas? I mean, it was like, for example, I have been trying to convince Tony to go to the United States for 2 years. Ever since I was at MWC originally with Tony, I was like, Tony, there's another show called CTIA. Let's go there. And Tony's like, I don't want to go to the United States. And I'm like, what's wrong with going to the United States? I've never liked it. And I'm like, Tony, let's just go. You're going on business. Nothing's going to happen. And he's like, if I go to that country and somebody looks at me bad, I am going to destroy them. It's like, Tony, come on.
Saying he doesn't like America is the biggest lie I've ever heard in my life.
So bogus. He is so obsessed with the country Western lifestyle.
And I was like, okay, Tony, let me understand this. So your favorite band is Bon Jovi. Your favorite car that you've always wanted to buy is a Camaro. Yeah. And you're always listening to country music.
And he's always wearing a cowboy hat.
He's always wearing a cowboy hat. So I'm like, what is wrong with you? So I really want to hear, how was Tony in the U.S.? Was he having fun?
He was. And he bought another hat.
Yeah, he bought another cowboy hat. Which I put on and took a picture of myself in.
So he kept walking outside to go smoke. And if you've ever been to Vegas, you know that if you're inside a casino, you can smoke.
You can smoke in the casino. That's the reason I was there.
He didn't know that. And he was going outside. He was walking, half a mile to go outside to smoke. And I'm like, Tony, why are you going outside? You can smoke inside the casino. He's like, no, I can't. And I grabbed an ashtray and handed it to him. And he's like, oh, Like, yeah, you can. You can't smoke inside the hotel, but you can smoke inside the casino.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What else we got from listener mail and the tweets? Do we have any other good ones?
I guess the only one that's left that I liked a lot is about that new, but I don't know if you guys were able to land that Intel presentation with that Asus TD300 tablet that runs Android and Windows. Because I was covering that on the daily, but I'm not sure if that was part of the crappy products that you just didn't want to film.
No, we didn't get to it.
Yeah, we didn't.
Yeah.
We didn't.
Yeah, well,
there was
so
things we didn't get to.
Yeah, no, and so the news about this tablet are mainly the fact that Intel is now going to focus on building almost every mobile chip that they make with the ability to dual boot with Android. And I think that's really cool. I don't know if you guys think that will actually allow the, Windows as a platform to take off, because it's funny, Windows 8.1 hasn't really taken the world by storm as a lot of people were expecting it to.
Well, yeah, it's early to say what 8.1 is doing. I mean, it's still young enough. It's not going to take the world by storm in a consumer sense. No one is ever going to sit there and be like, "Wow, 8.1 is cool." And I mean cool in a very, very populist kind of awesome way. Nobody's ever going to really say that because it's still got that Windows stigma to overcome. But
yeah. I have a question in that same vein, and this one is from Xander Weston on Facebook. Do you think the Note Pro 12.2 is a serious competitor for more professional tablets like the Surface?
Nah.
Well, it depends on what Samsung does. If you're talking professional, it depends on what Samsung does with Knox. Right now, Knox has some very big issues, and they need to be corrected before it'll be taken seriously by network administrators in a professional setting, I think.
Yeah, but the problem, and we go back to what defines a professional. For example, you do need security. It's one very important reason. But if you're an engineer, for example, you're not going to run AutoCAD on that thing. So that points towards the Surface Pro. Right. It'll depend on what they price that tablet and what demographic they try to attend to. But the problem, again, these are mobile processors. They were not defined for complex computing. So, you can edit a video, sort of, on a tablet. But these tablets are not yet at the point where that can happen. Probably with this push that Intel is trying to do, yes, it could happen in the future, but I don't see it happening in this or the next year, probably 2016. I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah, I just think the applications that companies are using tablets for are not that processor intensive. So I think anything on the market can handle in a retail setting, checking people into your store, on an airline, taking an order for a drink, that kind of stuff. I don't think a lot of companies are putting people out in the field and being like, all right, so when you get to the job site, we want you to open your tablet and design this skyscraper from your tablet. All right. I don't think that conversation's happening a lot.
Yeah, we don't need a ton of prosumer stuff on a tablet.
That's a good one. But to end one of my questions, and the reason why I was trying to make the segue with Windows is Windows Phone, no Windows Phone, nothing.
Yeah, I think Microsoft and Nokia are probably so preoccupied with their integration talks right now, and Nokia just dumped a whole lot of new products on the market not very long ago at Nokia World. I never expected anything interesting from Windows Phone here. Microsoft was running a few briefings that we didn't have the time to attend, but there was nothing new to see anyway. So, I don't know. I think if you expected something from Windows Phone at CES, you maybe should have been paying closer attention.
Well, here's the deal. I mean, Microsoft has always – so the Microsoft CEO has always taken the CS keynote. And then on the last CS that I went to on the first CS that I went to 2 years ago, they were kind of saying goodbye to Steve Ballmer because he wasn't going to be in charge of the keynote anymore eventually, which this time was Sony's CEO. And so I did see that Microsoft kind of took that to heart and didn't really use CES for anything at all. Whereas opposed to years ago, Microsoft was one of the big players.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I don't think. I don't know what Taylor's doing. Are you mining for more Facebook questions?
I was, and coughing and sniffing.
Yeah. Did you find another Facebook question? Because I think we're out of Twitter questions.
We're out as well, and we're also out of time.
We're almost out of time, but we have a couple pieces of listener mail that came in. Pursuant to this that I would like to address. But I wanted to make sure we were empty on the Facebook queue first.
We are.
Just to make sure, that everyone knows. We did receive some awesome Twitter questions and some awesome Facebook questions in addition to the ones we're reading on the air, but those have already been answered in our previous segments. Some people are asking about specific products that we've already talked about. I do like this one Twitter question, which will be the last one I read, from Death Metal. What booth had the most informed and knowledgeable crew? Cool question, I think.
That's a cool question, yeah.
This year, for me, it would have to be a tie between ZTE and Sony. Because Sony has never really ranked too high in my experience in Europe. In the trade shows I've been to in Europe, we've gotten like bad information from a lot of Sony reps, right down to the names of products that Sony reps just didn't know. But here at CES, we had some really knowledgeable reps who went out of their way to help us out and got us some devices and stuff. It was really, really great. But then ZTE, also, the guys helping us were some of the designers of the products themselves. The booth was not small by any means. It was a very big booth, but we got very, very good press treatment from ZTE. They answered every one of our questions accurately, quickly, and they got us some really cool time with the devices. So it sounds like we've got so much positive things to say about ZTE, we almost sound like shills, but I want to say, like, honestly, they handled this event very, very well.
Well, they deserve a break, man, and it's good that they focused on giving us a good impression of them. That's really where it starts.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree. I'm going to switch over to the listener mailbox, and I'm kind of picking and choosing what we read here because we are almost out of time, like you say, Jaime.
Yeah. I need to go record a Pocketnow Daily and the top 5.
Ooh, happy Friday to you, right?
Thank you. I thought I was going to have a smoother Friday, but then I forgot I did the editorial list.
Yes, that's right. This is a very interesting question that comes to us from Martin Coates. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He says, "Hi, guys. First of all, congratulations on the podcast. Love the reviews, the discussions, and the pops at Taylor. Good luck with Stitcher. Thank you. Don't forget, vote for us on Stitcher.
Thank you.
The coverage of CES 2014 was excellent. The video is top-notch. Thank you again. One of the things that interested me as a teacher was the introduction of PC manufacturers showing devices that run Android as an OS. I'm a keen advocate of using technology in teaching and learning. One of the main issues we have is workflow, getting content created on mobile devices to teachers for assessment of pupil understanding. My main question is in 2 parts. 1, what are your thoughts on these devices? And 2, what are your views on using mobile devices in teaching and learning? Sign of the times or gimmicky? Thank you again, guys. Martin." I love this question. Like the first one, I can just say that my response to the first part of this question, Android as an OS, it's a very versatile OS. We saw some computers running it this time around. We've seen the Chromebooks and blah, blah, blah. I don't know.
Car dashboards are running it as well now.
Exactly. So that kind of versatility you can't help but admire. For my money, it just needs to be executed properly rather than, well, we could do it, so we did it. We threw Android on this thing, and it runs really poorly, but it's Android in your refrigerator. Like, who cares, right? It has to run well for me to be impressed by it, and if it runs well, then I kind of almost don't care what OS it is, as long as it has an ecosystem that'll support it well, and Android certainly fits that bill. What do you think, Jaime?
Well, here's the deal, and answering the second question, which is great. How do I feel about, mobile devices serving for teaching? So I have a 4-year-old son who, I thought that it was just my son that was extremely smart, but then I noticed that pretty much most kids are. I mean, I gave him this game called Subway Surfers is the name of the game. And I am just surprised, and I'm going to upload a video on Twitter of my son playing this game because he can play it like we used to play Mario Brothers when we were 8, and he's just 4 years old. And it's mainly because since the mobile product interacts with you, there is really a lot of game there, whereas compared to making a kid interact with a piece of paper that's dead, that's not doing anything. So mobile products are definitely a better way to teach kids. I do feel that there is a lot of growth there. And obviously, we are just starting. There is a lot more to go. But we've seen how the iPad has helped, autism schools. And, a lot the iPhone has helped, or even certain Android phones have helped people with disabilities, So there is a lot of growth here coming. Just have to wait and see what developers come up with.
Yeah, Taylor, what do you
think? And who snotted there?
That was Taylor.
I'm dying over here, guys.
Yeah, I understand. Well,
I'm dying. I didn't hear the question. I wasn't around
The
for
question is mainly, what are your views on using mobile devices in teaching and learning? Sign of the times or gimmicky? And I'll say it while you think about it. I mean, sign of the times, absolutely. And maybe it's gimmicky. It's not always implemented well. There are plenty of stories you can find if you want to rag on this, if you're worried about becoming irrelevant and you have to yell at the future. Yeah, you can find stories of school districts implementing this poorly, of skyrocketing costs, of iPads being used as porn deliverers in classrooms. And yeah, of course, this is going to be misused. And of course, it's going to be a bumpy road to adoption. But there's a wonderful quote that I was trying to find, and I couldn't find it, from over a century ago, where someone was complaining about the rising use of paper in classrooms as opposed to blackboards. And they're saying, these kids can't even use a piece of chalk right anymore, and this paper is going to ruin learning. Like, that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing a reactionary opposition to anything new. Yeah, that is, and I think that's very detrimental. I can't stand people like that. I can't stand opinions like that.
Neither can I. I mean, 30 years
based in any reality.
30 years ago, the debate was if we should have multiple choice questions on our tests, or fill in the blanks, or which was the best way to examine us. So it's always going to be a debate which is the best way to teach people. The thing is, if you don't embrace what we can do today, we're not evolving. That's the point of evolution.
Exactly. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, I think this part of this question is actually particularly good for me. My mom is a tech facilitator at a local middle school, so her job is to teach teachers how to implement technology, and more specifically mobile technology, into their lesson plans. And one of the things she does is a lot of the classrooms there have Apple TV. And if the teacher there has like an app or an iPad or a MacBook or something to that degree, even an iPhone, they can bring up a website or a YouTube video or anything to that degree and share it on a projection screen.
Right.
And I actually went to the school for a career day, and I showed them what I do using an iPad and Apple TV. And I think something to that degree, and even letting some kids use their smartphone at school is a very good thing. Maybe if they use a cell jammer and restricted Wi-Fi access, you can keep out most of the bad stuff. Most.
I mean, how many kids do you know that are hackers? I mean, come on, just pull up a couple of restrictions on the tablets, and that's going to be it.
They're also getting smarter with each generation too, but.
True, but that's really the point. That's the point of technology, getting them smarter. So I think it's a good thing.
So let's. There's two more pieces of mail that I've got. Unless you guys have anything else to answer, let me know before we close these out. But a really quick question from Rightis Vitenas. I'm sure that's not how you say it. I just wanted to ask, why doesn't any company make smartwatches and other accessories like Sony Smartband, Fitbit Force, or just apps to work with accessories compatible with Windows Phone? The short question, the short answer is, Jaime?
Oh, God. Windows. No, please answer it. Somebody's going to hate me.
The short answer is basically market share and time versus profit.
Return on investment.
Yeah. ROI.
Because the Windows Phone is no longer technically a small platform, I think we can say, but it is the smallest of the three major ones that we discuss routinely. As a result, a developer looks at that environment, says, well, I can make a lot more money making an app or an accessory for one of the two larger guys, and I'm going to go ahead and focus on Android or iOS. So that's the problem. I don't like it any more than you do. I carry a Lumia 1020 as my daily driver. And
you do?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, along with the Moto X, it's half my daily driver. So, yeah, so I don't like it any more than you do. And hopefully we'll see that change as Windows Phone continues to pick up the pace in evolution. And
let's move to the third question, because Windows Phone is just going to be a complex topic.
Yeah. Really quickly, I wrote an editorial explaining why developers shouldn't be afraid of Windows Phone. I think it's very relevant to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe if you can link to it in the rundown.
I'd rather than link, and I'll link to it in the rundown. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I've got a final question here regarding CES. Does anybody else have anything to say, or can we end on this one?
No, go ahead.
All right. Let me know if you find a question that you really wanted to answer. But this one is somewhat long, but it's an important thing to discuss, and it's something we've touched on a couple times here. This one is from Imran Ahmad. My question, in short, relates to the future of Pocketnow. I've thoroughly enjoyed your coverage of CES 2014 and was also kept on tenterhooks following Michael Fisher on Twitter with his epic adventure getting to Vegas. I did feel, however, a little disappointed that at such a massive show, the amount of content was not as much as expected. My initial take on this is that you covered all the mobile tech, and maybe there wasn't that much to get excited about. But a comment Michael made on one of the clips that Pocketnow isn't a site that covers other consumer tech, such as TVs and cameras, etc., made me wonder if this is a route Pocketnow would consider opening up into. We have a new captain on the bridge, so does this mean big changes for 2014? I appreciate you maybe can't say or don't know yet, but I felt my beloved Pocketnow output was overshadowed with all the other amazing things covered by everyone else. Apologies for the essay. Best regards to all at Pocketnow. You really are the best. Imran. I love this question. This is one that typically I would... Well, no, this is one that I think a lot of other people wouldn't answer, and these are ones that I kind of seek out because we always love to give you a peek behind the curtain when we can at Pocketnow to tell you about what goes into successes and maybe non-successes. But I think we fell short of our goal in video output at CES this year by a considerable margin. I won't tell you what our goal was. Maybe Tony did on a previous show. I'm not sure. But it was hugely disappointing for me. I don't know if, I'll let Taylor speak on this when he wants to, but I was very let down. By the end of the CES, I was very annoyed. But we were dealing with a lot of circumstances that were beyond our control. The fact that I arrived over a day late was a real brutal hit in the face. But also, frankly, we were scheduled in a travel time slot that didn't really allow us to cover as much. We lost a day. At the tail end of the show, we lost a day that could have given us an additional probably 10 or 15 videos. And unfortunately, we just didn't have that time. We had to leave because that's when our tickets said we had to leave. And we did investigate the possibility of changing that departure time, but by the time we did, it was just it would have been too expensive. Yeah. So I was very, very, very sad about it, and I agree with you. I think that our coverage was much less than it could have been this year. Taylor, you were trying to interrupt me a second ago.
Yeah, interrupt you.
No, I'm sorry. You were trying to come in on this, is what I meant.
Well, we were also planning originally for a 4-person team.
That's right.
Yeah, there was that, and then there was the time constraint, and that plus Michael showing up late, and all of the other stuff just kind of okay. So typically, the first 2 days or the 2 days before the show are some of the most busy for people in the mobile industry, but a lot of the stuff didn't happen like it normally does. Like usually there are a bunch of press events before CES kicks off, and CES kicked off this year out on a Tuesday. On Monday, there really wasn't a lot of stuff going on. Like the press events we went to, all the ones that really had a lot of mobile stuff, and there were what, 2 or 3? Yeah. So it was really strange because a lot of the companies just stuck to the show floor rather than having their one-off press events, and we only had one day on the show floor. So it was very constrained in what we could do with that time.
Yeah, and that's why you see entire categories missing. Like that's why you see no ASUS coverage from us because we just didn't have the time.
No, but listen, guys, let's leverage here. So I was one of the people that was crazy enough to do CES alone, and a lot. It's easy for you to signal like why we were expecting more. Well, yeah. Our viewers and readers do, but so did we. It's not like if there was a lot to cover, and that's really one of the biggest problems lately with mobile companies. They're trying to do their own shows. And they leave they announce a couple of things at CES, but nothing as compelling as they do privately on their shows. And we've been saying that for the last 2 years. We've been saying that we were expecting more, and we've been repeating this phrase every single time. So I don't know about you, Michael. I know that you guys had a lot of struggles and a lot of disappointments, but to be honest with you, even though we did reach our goal last year, it had to be with a lot of the content that we found at the cesspool. It wasn't like like we had the content there to be able to actually reach the goal.
No question. And I don't want to find ourselves in a situation again where we're trying to reach a video goal.
Right.
We're filming crap. We're filming paper
Exactly.
that's never going to make it. But the point is, like that's not what happened this year. Yes, there was still a lot of crap that we could have filmed to try and meet our quota, all the stuff in the Watch Zone.
But there was
also a lot of really good stuff that we could not film because we didn't have an extra day. There was good stuff that we missed, and that's what I'm frustrated about.
Yeah, but hey, listen, man, it's not like nobody was predicting a snowstorm. Nobody was predicting all the problems. And a lot of people, almost every one of the outlets had the same issue. Unless you were there a week before in Vegas, it was really hard to actually get, and you remember last year. You remember last year how much of a struggle we had. And even with all the struggle and even with all the logistics, we still couldn't cover everything. Again, because the biggest problem with CES is, we focus on, can we focus on laptops? Why not? But then our name wouldn't be Pocketnow. We try to focus on the things that are really focused on what we do. And we could cover cars at CES if we wanted to, but we completely lose scope, and that's really not what we want.
Yeah,
that's. Go ahead.
There are a lot of other sites that have grown, beyond the mobile category, and I think there's really compelling stuff to be found there. I mean, I love reading about some of the stuff that the outlets that have moved out of mobile exclusively are covering, but it's not what we do. I'm really, really pleased that we're sticking to a mobile focus.
So am I.
So to answer that other question about laptops, I mean, there are some intimations from levels above my head that we may broaden our coverage somewhat in the coming months. But when we do that, we're going to do it right. We're not just going to say, hey, we cover this other thing now, and then just start doing it.
No.
There's going to be a plan in place, and it's going to take a while. So we appreciate your loyalty in the interim, and just understand that mobile is where all of our hearts lie. I think that's what we are most interested in covering. And when we broaden, it will be in something that we all can develop as much passion toward as we do currently toward mobile. So.
I don't know about you guys, but I am proud of your coverage. I have been there twice. I know how crazy it is. I know the crazy things that we have to do to be able to upload the videos. Yeah. So for those of us that have been there, for those of us that have actually known all the struggles, I mean, Taylor could tell you his stories last year. I feel that we did a great job. And I feel that obviously, limitations are there. I mean, I was there alone the first time. And you remember when we had our conference call last year, and I was like, I am not doing that show alone or just with Brandon. Yeah. Somebody else has to come to the show, and we need to rent this and we need to do this. Or if not, I'm staying here, because it is just too crazy to do so without the tools that we needed. It is just too crazy.
I think that we have had a nice learning experience. I think you will see some very interesting stuff from MVC, from IFA, and certainly from next year's CES. Particularly, I would really very much like to head that up. So we will see. We've got a year to plan that. We've got a whole lot of things in between. And in the very short term, we have some healing to do, I think. So.
I was about to say, you guys need a break on that voice, and I need to go film. So I do believe that I could now hand out, finally, thank you, Lord. I can finally hand out hosting the show to Michael for him to wrap it up. I know I've been a terrible host.
You've been a wonderful host, Jaime. Thank you for taking the brunt of the talking off my shoulders this show. I do appreciate it. Taylor?
Yeah, I've kept my mute button on for the majority of the show because I've been dying over here, but I need to go hibernate.
Yeah, we got a bit. But I want to tell everyone to please pay attention to Pocketnow. We, though we are no longer in Vegas, there are a couple more pieces from CES to go up, including not only this podcast, but a video wrap-up, which should be up momentarily, and an outtakes video next week. We didn't have as many outtakes this time because we were... frankly, more pressed for time than ever, so we kind of did a better job than usual. But we got a few outtakes to share with you. There's also a Lumia 1020 After the Buzz that's been held in the buffer for a while that's going up very soon. And a bunch of other stuff. The Pocketnow Daily is coming later today as well. So stay tuned for all of that. We thank you for listening, and we really, really, really ask you to please, if you stuck with us all the way on this show, please remember to vote for us on Twitter. We'd love to win Best Tech Show of 2013.
Vote for us on Twitter.
And vote for us on Stitcher, right?
Stitcher.
Yes,
but you said Twitter? Oh,
you did.
Yeah. Well, that goes to show you I should stop with some of these medications. Maybe not all of them. But I think until next week, that's going to do it for the Pocketnow Weekly. Thank you for joining us, folks. Again, thank you for sticking with us through CES. And be sure to find us on Twitter, not just Stitcher. Casper Tech, Jaime_Rivera, Captain Two Phones. You can also follow Pocketnow officially at Pocketnow on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Google+. You can see us at forums.pocketnow.com to share your own opinions. And if you enjoy the show, please leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or Xbox Music. And if you have a topic, question, or suggestion for the show, or you just want to say hi, you can email us a brief message, please, at podcast@pocketnow.com. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we will see you next week.